Welcome back, everyone. This is Mike, and I'm here to do another episode of Movies from A to Z after taking a little bit of a break from this particular project. So I'm up to the letter R, and I'm going to talk about Reefer Madness from 1936. Reefer Madness on this nice double bill with Cocaine Fiends. And if you ever seen this, it's a very cool movie. Became rather famous in the 1970s for people who played it at midnight movies because they just wanted to laugh at it, and a lot of people who were high when they were watching it. But anyway, so the movie actually started its life as a sponsored by a church group, and it was originally called Tell Your Children, and that particular phrase is shown right at the end of the film instead of the end. It's just Tell Your Children. They were trying to make a very serious movie showing the effects of marijuana and the dangers, and shortly after it was made, it was bought by a producer of exploitational films who decided to change it into an exploitational type movie. He did some editing, he added scenes that were a little more risque, and changed the title to Reefer Madness. It was also known at different times as, The Burning Question, Dope Addict, Doped Youth, and even Love Madness. I'm not sure where that came from because there's not much love going on in the film. So anyway, it's only 68 minutes long, cost about $100,000 to make. Directed by a guy named Louis Gosnier. He was a French-American director who made several low-budget films going all the way back to the silent era, and he was probably better known as one of the directors of the serial The Perils of Pauline. Okay, so Reefer Madness is one of the last films that he made. And okay, so let me read you the foreword of the film, which comes on before the action starts. It's very dramatic and very long, and I'm going to see if I can read my own handwriting here. I was scribbling this down while I was watching it on the screen, trying to do it very quickly. So this will tell you more about the film than anything else. The motion picture you are about to witness may startle you. It would not have been possible otherwise to sufficiently emphasize the frightful toll of the new drug menace which is destroying the youth of America in alarmingly increasing numbers. Marijuana, spelled with an H instead of a J. Marijuana is that drug, a violent narcotic, an unspeakable scourge. The real public enemy number one. Its first effect is violent, uncontrollable laughter. Then come dangerous hallucinations. Space expands. Time slows down, almost stands still. Fixed ideas come next, conjuring up monstrous extravagances, followed by emotional disturbances. Oh, my writing is so bad. The total inability to direct thoughts. The loss of all power to resist physical emotions. That's true. Well, that's another video. Leading finally to acts of shocking violence, ending often in incurable insanity. In picturing its soul-destroying effects, no attempt was made to equivocate. The scenes and incidents which, while fictional for the purposes of the story, are based upon actual research into the results of marijuana addiction. If their stark reality will make you think, will make you aware that something must be done to wipe out this ghastly menace, then the picture will not have failed in its purpose. Because the dread marijuana may be reaching forth, next for your son or daughter, or yours. Okay, I think I covered everybody there. Yours or yours. Anyway, so what you really have when you start watching the movie is kind of a very typical 1930s melodrama. It almost could have been an Andy Hardy film starring Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland, where Andy, instead of having trouble with finding out who to date and who to take to the prom, he goes to a party and smokes marijuana. It could have been called Andy Hardy Meets a Drug Addict, or Andy Hardy Gets Loaded. And I don't know, it was a good story with some good acting, at least for that time, the kind of style you had back in a lot of dramatic films back then. But what I find overemphasized and overdramatic is the way some of the effects they show of people getting high, just dancing really fast and in a way that how anybody back then would have thought that was terrifying or something that would take you away from wanting to use marijuana, because it was just so funny seeing people dance and jump up and down and laughing uncontrollably, and then the whole thing about the violence. I've never known anybody in my experience of using marijuana back in the 1970s, and I haven't used it since the very early 80s, so I'm totally out of practice here, but I've never known anybody who got violent because they got high on marijuana. Most people just act very stupid, say a lot of really dumb things that we used to think were very profound and intelligent, and then we just go to sleep. You usually eat way too much, and then you go to sleep. Now, of course, it's always a really bad idea to try to drive a car after you've been smoking marijuana, just like it is when you've been drinking. And I admit that I've done all those things, and nothing bad ever happened to me. I was very, very lucky. And so, anyway, this is kind of apropos for my life right now, because I live in the state of Illinois, and the governor of Illinois has just signed into law, making marijuana legal for recreational use beginning on January 1st of next year. I think, what is it, an ounce or less, you'll be able to buy it and just use it, put it in your cookies or smoke it. So we'll see how that works out. I'm not so sure it's a good idea. The only thing I think is good about it is the fact that it will no longer be a criminal offense, which I think is good, and also that it will be able to get some tax revenue out of it. So since Illinois is basically bankrupt, that might be a good thing. But since they also just raised the gasoline tax by 19 more cents a gallon, since none of us will be able to go anywhere, I guess we'll all be sitting home in a haze of smoke, just getting loaded, and that'll be our lives. So what else about this movie? Directed by, I think I told you, it was directed by Louis Gasnier. The people who were in it were basically a lot of actors who were in mainly low-budget films and westerns and things like that, and some of them who made dozens of films that were just sort of uncredited appearances. Names like Dave O'Brien, Dorothy Short, who happened to be married in real life, and they made a lot of films together. Thelma White had a lot of credits. Let's see. Then there was a woman named Lillian Miles who had a small part in the film. She was pretty good, actually. And she only made a handful of films in the 1930s. And if you ever saw the Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers classic musical, The Gay Divorcee, in 1934, the very long musical number, The Continental, where Ginger and Fred were dancing and singing, and a lot of other people were taking part, doing little bits of singing here and there. She was the woman who just showed up out of nowhere, this brassy showgirl who started singing a long segment of The Continental. So if you remember that movie, then you've seen Lillian Miles. This movie, I guess, at some point they colorized it and re-released it, and I also read on Wikipedia that somebody's doing a remake, which supposedly is coming out in 2019, and I haven't heard anything about that. So let me know if you've seen Reefer Madness. We can all get high and watch it together after January 1st.